History remembers Oda Nobunaga as a madman who burned temples and crushed armies, but the scariest thing about him wasn't the violence. It was how calculated every move was. This is the story of a man who made everyone underestimate him, then proved them wrong by destroying everything they believed about how the world worked. Pull your blanket up. We are going to 16th century Japan. Chapter 1. The teenager everyone wanted dead. Imagine you are a samurai lord in 1550s Japan. You have a 16-year-old boss. He shows up to his own father's funeral wearing rags and throwing incense at the altar instead of placing it properly. He eats rice, standing up in the corridor while his guests watch from inside the ceremony room. He runs through the streets wrestling with peasant kids. That was Oda Nobunaga. His own family called him the Great Fool. His teachers begged his father to disown him. There were actual assassination plots from his own retainers, serious men sitting in dark rooms saying maybe we should kill him and put his brother in charge instead. Every other son of a daimyo spent their youth practicing calligraphy, studying poetry, and learning proper court etiquette. Nobunaga spent his learning how to fight with a wooden sword against anyone dumb enough to challenge him. He collected street urchins as friends and learned their language. He could drink harder than any soldier in his clan. But here is the thing nobody understood at the time. Nobunaga was not an idiot. He was running a test. Every outrageous thing he did was a filter. The people who dismissed him as worthless would underestimate him later when it mattered. The few who saw past the act, who noticed the sharp eyes behind the crazed grin, would become his most loyal followers. He was 16 years old, and he was already playing a game nobody else knew existed. In a world of rigid ceremony and deadly court politics, acting like a complete fool was the smartest disguise imaginable. Chapter 2. The battle the enemy didn't know was happening. Nobunaga was 27 when his first real test arrived. Imagawa Yoshimoto was one of the 3 most powerful lords in Japan. He marched 25,000 soldiers into Oda territory like he owned it. Nobunaga had maybe 3,000 men. Every single advisor told him to surrender or commit ritual suicide. The clan treasury was empty. The castle walls were paper thin. Everyone expected the end, but Nobunaga refused to panic. He sent out spies and learned that Imagawa's army had stopped at a narrow gorge called Dengaku-hazama to celebrate their early victories. They were drinking sake. They were relaxed. They had no idea the enemy was watching from the hills above. Then a massive thunderstorm rolled in. Rain so heavy you could not see your own hand in front of your face. To any normal commander, this would be reason to wait. Nobunaga saw it as the perfect cover. He marched his men out in the downpour, circled around behind the enemy camp, and hit them from the rear just as the storm peaked in noise and fury. Imagine being a drunk samurai in a tent when 3,000 screaming men appear out of the rain behind you. Imagawa Yoshimoto heard the commotion and thought it was his own men fighting over Sakai. He stepped out of his tent to look and took a spear through the chest before he could speak a single word. The battle lasted maybe an hour. Nobunaga won the fight without ever fighting a fair battle. Later, he placed Imagawa's severed head on a stand and addressed his own terrified troops. He did not give a victory speech. He simply said, "We are not finished yet," and walked away. He was 27 years old, and he had just killed one of the most powerful men in Japan. Chapter 3. The gift that made a regent afraid of rice. After Dengoku Hazama, Nobunaga was suddenly a serious player. But winning a battle and winning the peace are two completely different skills. The shogun's regent in Kyoto, a man who had seen empires rise and fall, demanded tribute. Nobunaga sent mountains of gifts, gold ingots, silk rolls, swords forged by master smiths, armor lacquered in deep red. Every item was carefully arranged according to strict protocol. But among the luxury goods was something strange. Bags of rice tied with a specific knot that only Nobunaga's people knew how to open. The regent's servants tried for hours. They could not undo a single one. Every other lord's tribute included rice that could be opened, inspected, counted, and redistributed to the regent's allies. Nobunaga's rice sat there, tied shut, as a silent and immovable message. You cannot open it because I control it. You cannot use it because I control it. You eat what I give you when I decide to give it. The regent understood the insult immediately. He could not untie the rice, and he could not complain about it without admitting that a young country lord had outsmarted him. So he accepted the gifts with a practiced smile and never mentioned the rice. But he stopped sleeping well that week. The thought loop here is universal. Everyone has been in a situation where someone gives you something generous but leaves you feeling like you owe them something bigger. Nobunaga was a master of that feeling. He did not just defeat enemies on the battlefield, he made powerful men feel small while smiling politely in their faces. Chapter 4. The Unlikely Friendship. Most samurai lords collected alliances through marriage, hostages, and cash payments. Nobunaga collected them through pure personality. The best example was Tokugawa Ieyasu. Ieyasu was a minor lord from a small, mountainous province. He was quiet, cautious, and frankly boring compared to the flashy warlords of the era. Nobunaga met him when they were both young and struggling, and something clicked. Nobunaga was fire, pure destruction in constant motion. Ieyasu was ice, patient and observant, never in a hurry. They made a pact, and it lasted for decades, which was almost unheard of in an era where alliances shifted with the seasons. There is a famous story about the two of them playing a game of Go in a fortress. Nobunaga casually mentioned that he was planning an invasion of a neighboring province. Ieyasu nodded and kept staring at the board. Nobunaga pushed harder, dropping details about troop movements and battle timings. Ieyasu moved a stone and said, interesting, in a tone that suggested he found the game more engaging than the invasion. This drove Nobunaga crazy in a way he actually enjoyed. Most people in Japan were afraid of him by this point. Ieyasu was never afraid, and that is exactly why Nobunaga trusted him above all others. The social lesson here is subtle but real. The most powerful people in history were often drawn to the one person in the room who did not flinch. Nobunaga did not want he wanted someone honest enough to tell him when he was wrong. Ieyasu was that man, and their partnership reshaped Japan. Chapter 5. The day he burned a sacred mountain. Mount Hiei was the most sacred place in Japanese Buddhism. 1,000 years of continuous religious history. Temples that housed the most powerful warrior monks in the country. Armories stocked with weapons. Walls built for defense. These monks had been a law unto themselves for centuries. They burned Kyoto twice when it suited their political interests. They fought alongside whoever paid them. They gave sanctuary to Nobunaga's enemies and refused every demand to hand them over. Every single lord in Japan knew the warrior monks were a problem. Nobody did anything about it because nobody was crazy enough to attack a holy mountain. Nobunaga was that crazy. In 1571, he marched his army up the slopes of Mount Hiei. The monks expected negotiation. They expected an exchange of hostages or a payment in gold. They expected anything except what actually happened. Nobunaga ordered the entire mountain burned. Every temple, every shrine, every storehouse. Men, women, children, thousands of people. He made no distinction between warrior monks and civilians because he did not care to make one. The smoke from Mount Hiei was visible from Kyoto for 3 days straight. The horror of it rippled across every province in Japan. Every lord, every priest, every farmer understood the message immediately. This man has no line he will not cross. If he will burn a holy mountain to the ground, he will burn your castle. If he will kill monks in their own temples, he will kill you in your own home. Nobunaga did not just win battles by being stronger. He won wars by being scarier. And after Mount Hiei, nobody in Japan questioned his right to rule. Chapter 6. The Battle Where Horses Met Bullets. The Takeda clan had the most feared cavalry in Japan. Thousands of samurai on horseback, trained for generations, charging downhill with lances extended and armor gleaming. The sight alone broke enemy morale before the first impact. In 1575, the young Takeda lord marched these riders toward Nagashino Castle. Nobunaga responded with something Japan had never seen in battle before. He built a long wooden palisade across the battlefield, sharpened stakes driven into the ground and connected by heavy beams. Behind this fence, he placed 3,000 soldiers with matchlock guns. These were not simple muskets, they were Portuguese-style arquebuses that Japanese smiths had learned to manufacture with stunning precision. Nobunaga trained his gunners to fire in 3 rotating rows. The first row shoots and steps back to reload. The second row steps forward and fires. The third row kneels and prepares. The cycle was continuous and relentless. The Takeda cavalry charged straight into this formation. They had never seen a rotating volley before. They had no concept of what they were riding into. The first wave hit the fence and died instantly. Horses crashed into sharpened stakes while bullets punched through armor at close range. The second wave pushed over the bodies of the first and died the same way. The third wave stopped dead. Horses simply will not charge into walls of flame and noise and screaming death. The survivors were finished off by Nobunaga's samurai on the flanks. That single afternoon ended the age of the cavalry charge in Japan. The age of the gun had arrived, and Nobunaga was the man holding the trigger. Chapter 7. The most powerful man who refused the throne. By 1582, Nobunaga controlled roughly half of Japan. He had crushed the Takeda clan. He had broken the warrior monks forever. He had chased the Ashikaga shogun out of Kyoto and abolished the office. Everyone in the country expected him to name himself the new shogun. It was the natural next step, the traditional move every unifier before him had made. Nobunaga refused, and he never explained why. This silence drove absolutely everyone crazy. His enemies wondered wildly if he was planning something even bigger. His allies worried they had somehow offended him. The imperial court in Kyoto sent multiple emissaries hinting that they would happily support his claim to any title he wanted. Nobunaga shrugged them all off with the same disinterest. Historians still debate his real motive. The most popular theory is that Nobunaga saw the shogunate as a relic of the old system. He did not want to become shogun because being shogun would put him inside the existing framework. He wanted to destroy the system entirely and build something completely new from the ground up. What kind of ruler would he have made? Nobody knows, because he never got the chance to show us. But the refusal itself was a brilliant piece of psychological warfare. Wanting something makes you vulnerable. Acting like you do not want the highest prize in the land makes everyone around you desperate to hand it to you. And that is exactly what happened. Every lord in Japan started lining up to offer Nobunaga more power, each hoping to be the one who finally convinced him to take it. Chapter 8. The guy who collected Western tech like it was Pokemon. Nobunaga was genuinely obsessed with Europe. This was deeply unusual for a Japanese warlord of his era. Most daimyo saw the Portuguese missionaries as a nuisance with a strange religion and weirder clothes. Nobunaga could not get enough of them. He collected globes, clocks, telescopes, maps, velvet cloaks, and anything else that came off the ships from the west. He wore a European hat over his samurai topknot because he thought it made him look sophisticated. He loved the Jesuit priests because they brought guns, knowledge, and news from a world he had never seen, even though he privately told his generals that their god was obviously a fairy tale invented for Europeans. His most prized possession was a massive globe that showed the entire known world. Imagine a Japanese warlord in full armor spinning a globe in his castle, pointing at Spain and asking a Portuguese priest if the king there would make a useful ally. Nobunaga was thinking beyond Japan. He was planning invasions of Korea and China. He studied maps of the Pacific and asked detailed questions about European shipbuilding. He understood something that almost nobody in Japan understood at the time. The world was getting smaller, and the countries that adapted would win. The social contrast is fascinating. Almost every other Japanese lord of his era was deeply conservative. They wore the same armor their grandfathers wore, they fought the same way, they thought the same thoughts. Nobunaga was a collector of new ideas from anywhere they came. Every clock, every book, every European map was a window into a world he was determined to understand and eventually conquer. Chapter 9. The Castle That Screamed, "I'm Better Than You." In 1579, Nobunaga finished building Azuchi Castle. It was unlike anything Japan had ever seen. 7 stories of stone, gold leaf, and painted screens. A massive stone base built in the Western style because Nobunaga wanted it to look modern and advanced. The interior walls were painted by the most famous artists in Japan. Scenes of tigers and dragons and blooming cherry trees in vivid color. Real tigers and leopards paced in cages at the main entrance, imported from Korea at enormous expense. The top floor was painted to look like the Buddhist paradise, with Nobunaga himself depicted as a living Buddha seated at the center. When visiting lords arrived at Azuchi Castle, they literally could not speak. The place was designed to intimidate. Every room was bigger than the largest room in their own castles. Every painting was done by an artist whose name they knew. Every detail screamed wealth, power, and cultural sophistication beyond anything they could match. There is a story about a provincial lord who got lost inside the castle and wandered the corridors for a full hour before finding his way out. He was too embarrassed to ever admit it happened. The castle was pure propaganda, built out of stone and wood and gold paint. Nobunaga understood something that modern politicians understand very well. Visual presentation changes how people treat you. Azuchi Castle was his billboard, his campaign ad, and his Alpha Flex all rolled into one monument, and it worked perfectly. Every lord who visited went home and told everyone they knew that Nobunaga was not just winning battles, he was living in a completely different world from the rest of them. Chapter 10. The Quiet Before the Knife. By early 1582, Nobunaga was at the absolute peak of his power. He had crushed every major rival. He had built his dream castle. He was finalizing plans for a massive invasion of Western Japan. His generals were loyal, wealthy, and successful. Everything looked perfect. That was the problem. Nobunaga had become arrogant in a way that even his friends noticed. He started treating his top subordinates the way he used to treat his enemies. He beat one of his most capable generals, a man named Akechi Mitsuhide, with a closed fan in front of the entire court. The offense, serving a meal that Nobunaga decided was not good enough. He reassigned Akechi's ancestral territory to another lord without warning, stripping the man of land his family had held for generations. He forced Akechi to host and serve a banquet for a rival general he openly despised, making him pour wine for a man who had insulted him in public. Akechi endured every single humiliation with perfect composure. He bowed deeply every time. He smiled politely at every insult. He poured the wine without spilling a drop. But in his private chambers at night, Akechi studied maps of Kyoto and started counting the days. He marked the movements of Nobunaga's armies across a hand-drawn map. He noted which castles were lightly guarded and which roads led into the capital unseen. The chapter breathes here, a quiet moment before the storm breaks. Nobunaga had no idea his most capable general was planning his death. He saw compliance and mistook it for loyalty. The thought loop is deeply human. How many times have you watched someone smile at you while planning something you would never expect? Nobunaga was a genius at warfare, but he had forgotten that peace requires a completely different kind of intelligence. Chapter 11. The enemy is at Hanoji. June 21st, 1582. Nobunaga was staying at Hanoji Temple in Kyoto with only 30 personal guards. His massive army was spread across Japan, preparing for the Western invasion. He was relaxed, careless, and completely alone. Akechi Mitsuhide moved 13,000 troops through the mountain passes under cover of darkness and rain. Nobody noticed. The army arrived outside Kyoto before dawn and surrounded the temple in perfect silence. Then the signal went out. Akechi's men shouted the famous words across the city. The enemy is at Honog. Every soldier knew what that meant. They stormed the temple gates from every direction at once. Nobunaga was still in his sleeping robes when he heard the shouting. He grabbed a bow and fought from the upper floors, firing arrow after arrow into the darkness below. Each one found its mark. But 30 men cannot stop 13,000, no matter how well they shoot. When the temple caught fire, Nobunaga made his final choice. He walked into the burning room, closed the sliding door behind him, and disappeared into the smoke and flames. No body was ever recovered. The Demon King of Japan was simply gone. He was 47 years old. The greatest strategic mind of the Sengoku period did not die in a grand battle or a heroic final charge. He died in a burning temple in the middle of a city he thought he owned, killed by a man he had humiliated one too many times. The irony is brutal. Nobunaga spent his entire career being the most careful strategist in Japan. But he was never careful about the people closest to him. He never saw Akechi coming until it was far too late. Chapter 12. what he left behind. Nobunaga only unified about half of Japan before he died, but the half he unified was permanently changed. He introduced mass-produced firearms to Japanese warfare and proved that traditional cavalry was obsolete. He built the roads, market towns, and tax systems that would fuel Japan's economy for the next 3 centuries. He broke the political power of the Buddhist monasteries forever. He proved that a lord from a minor province with no impressive family name could conquer the country through sheer intelligence and willpower. Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the man who completed Nobunaga's dream of unification, had started his career as Nobunaga's personal sandal-bearer. Tokugawa Ieyasu, the man who locked Japan down for 250 years of peace, was his childhood friend and lifelong ally. The entire Tokugawa shogunate was built on foundations that Nobunaga laid. Here is a strange detail to end on. When Nobunaga was a boy, his father poured him a cup of sake and told him a story about his own grandfather who had been assassinated by a trusted retainer during a banquet. His father said, "Trust nobody completely. Not your best friend, not your closest general, not even me." Nobunaga remembered that lesson his entire adult life. He applied it to every enemy, every rival, every stranger he met, but he forgot it at the exact moment he needed it most. That is the shape of his story. A man brilliant enough to reshape an entire nation, but human enough to miss the knife coming for his own back. He was the scariest man in samurai history, and in the end, he was still just a man.